Knowing and analyzing your audience is very important when preparing to give or while giving a speech. In one of our videos this week that was part of our educational manuals, readings, and lectures, it stated that public speaking is not necessarily about the speaker or the message, but rather the audience. I feel like this statement does a really good job to just sum up the overall importance of knowing and analyzing your audience. So when giving a speech, there are 3 times when you want to analyze your audience. That's going to be before, during, and after your speech. So before your speech, there are going to be 3 things that you want to look at. The first is demographics. So this is just looking at things such as age, gender, just so you have an idea of who you're speaking to. One thing, it's important to know your demographics, but you don't want to get it mixed up to where you begin to stereotype. So don't change things too much, but just be aware of who you're going to speak of. Age can really make a big difference. If you're talking to younger people, obviously you don't want to bore them. You want to talk things a bit more their interest. And if you're talking to an older crowd, perhaps you can bring in more facts, educational things, and they'll stay more focused. You also want to look at do a psychographic analysis. This is more of values, and this is where the Maslow's hierarchy of needs is going to come into play, which is self-actualization, esteem, love and belonging, safety needs, and physiological needs. So this is where you're really looking to motivate your audience. You want to know what's going to make them feel good, actually want to take action, help them follow along, and just overall you want to motivate your audience. This is where this pyramid comes into play. And then next you're going to look at situational. This isn't necessarily your audience, but more where you're going to be giving the speech, such as really just a setting. Think what time of day it's going to be. Is it going to be early? Do you need to kind of say something to wake your audience up and get them going? Is it going to be later in the day? Think about if there be any noises that may be distracting, how you can prepare for those. And also one question you want to ask yourself, is this voluntary or captive? So is your audience voluntarily coming to this, or they're not being held captive, but are they kind of forced to go? Are they coming for extra credit? Do they not necessarily want to be there? So if they're coming there voluntary, you know that they are interested in what you're about to say, but if not, you might want to just think of ways where you can keep them engaged, because it might not necessarily be something they want to hear about. So maybe just throw in a joke here or there, different ways you can keep their attention. Now during your speech, you really just want to see that your audience is paying attention, and just ways you can do this is just look at their facial expressions, try to make eye contact with them. If you're not ever looking up, making eye contact, you're not really going to know how your audience is reacting to your speech. Also, acceptance. Are they accepting what you're saying? You can see this also by facial expressions, but also just by gestures, such as nodding their head. So just while you're doing your speech, during your speech, you want to make sure you're paying attention to your audience. You're not just zoned out, focused on yourself. You want to keep your audience engaged. Make sure they are engaged, nodding their head, making expressions, just ways you can know they're following along. And if you see that they're not paying attention, maybe they're on their phone, think of ways you can get them back engaged in your speech. And then after your speech, how you're going to analyze your audience. So there are 2 different times you need to think about this. Short term, that's just hanging around, make sure that the audience accepted your message, that they understood what you say. And then long term, you want to make sure you follow through with your audience if possible. So these are just all the different ways you need to analyze your audience. Make sure to do it before, during, and after your speech. It's very important to know who your audience is, so you know how to prepare yourself, and you make sure they are engaged as possible, and that your speech truly did leave an impact on them.